Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit this subscribe button, so you never miss a story like this. And also comments where you are watching from, how many sons and daughters you have. Thanks.
My name is Elijah Carter. I grew up in a small American town where family was supposed to mean everything. That's what my grandmother always taught me: blood should never turn its back on blood. But that night, standing in the middle of my family's living room, I realized how far we had fallen from those words. I wasn't just angry. I was shaking with rage, because what I saw wasn't just neglect, it was betrayal. "Are you out of your mind?" I shouted, slamming my fist against the mantel, making the photos rattle in their frames. "She's out there shivering in the cold, and you're sitting here like kings and queens in front of the fire?" My voice cracked, echoing off the wooden walls. My chest burned with fury. My Uncle Greg leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his eyes flashing with arrogance. "Watch your tone, Elijah. Don't you dare come in here yelling at us like you own this house." His words dripped with venom, his tone more dismissive than the icy wind outside. "I don't need to own this house to know what's right." I snapped back, stepping closer, my heart hammering. "Grandma is outside, in the freezing dark, wearing nothing but that thin sweater. She's 90 years old, for God's sake. Do you want her to freeze to death while you sip hot cocoa?" The room went silent for a moment, except for the crackle of the fire. My cousins, sprawled on the leather couch, avoided my eyes, pretending to scroll through their phones. My Aunt Marie gave a low laugh, cold and sharp. "Always so dramatic, Elijah. She's fine. She wanted fresh air. If she's cold, she knows how to come inside." I couldn't believe my ears. My fists clenched at my sides. "Fresh air?" I repeated, my voice rising. "It's 20 degrees out there." Her hands were blue when I saw her. "Blue? And you're all acting like it's no big deal?" Greg stood up slowly, towering over me. His face was red with anger now, his jaw clenched tight. "You think you're some kind of hero, huh? Just because you moved back here after college? You think you can barge in and tell us how to treat our mother?" He jabbed a finger into my chest, hard. I smacked his hand away. "Your mother? You don't get to claim her when you treat her like a burden. Don't you dare play the ownership card with me. She raised every single one of us. She put food on the table when you were too busy wasting your life at the bar. And now you're letting her rot in the cold because you can't be bothered to give her a blanket?" The words landed like punches, but Greg didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned in so close I could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Careful, boy," he hissed. "You're walking a thin line." "I don't care about your line." I roared back. My throat ached, but I couldn't stop. The fire inside me burned hotter than the flames in the fireplace. This isn't about me. This is about her. About the woman who sacrificed everything for this family. And you. You're sitting here acting like she's disposable." Marie scoffed, rolling her eyes. "She's old, Elijah. People get old. People get tired. Stop acting like she's some kind of saint. You're making a big deal out of nothing." My vision blurred with rage. Nothing. They were calling my grandmother, my rock, my best friend, the woman who wiped my tears and prayed for me every single night, nothing. I took a step forward, my voice trembling but louder than ever. "She is everything," I shouted. "She is the reason any of you even have a roof over your head. Don't forget who signed the papers for this house when none of you had a dime. Don't forget who worked her hands raw in that diner for 30 years so you could eat. And now you've got the nerve to let her sit outside like a stray dog." Greg's face twisted with fury. He shoved me hard, and my back hit the edge of the table, knocking over a glass that shattered across the floor. My cousins jumped up now, one of them grabbing Greg's arm. "Uncle, stop," they said, but he shook them off. I straightened up, my chest heaving, my knuckles white. "Go ahead," I dared him, my voice raw. "Hit me if that's all you've got." But know this, every second you waste trying to shut me up is another second she's out there freezing. And when something happens to her, that blood will be on your hands." The room fell into tense silence. My aunt muttered something under her breath, my cousins shifted uncomfortably, and Greg just glared at me with pure hatred. But I didn't care. I wasn't going to back down. Because deep down, I already knew the truth. Sometimes the worst betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the very people who are supposed to love you most. And if I didn't fight for my grandmother right then, no one would. That night became the turning point. The moment I realized that family isn't about who shares your last name, it's about who shows up when it matters. And in that room, with the fire blazing and their selfishness on full display, I knew I was the only one left willing to fight for her. So I made myself a promise. I would not let her suffer. Not while I had breath in my lungs. Not while I had strength in my bones. Even if it meant standing alone against my own flesh and blood. Because sometimes, standing up for what's right means standing against everyone you love. And that's exactly what I was about to do. If you think family will always protect you, think again. What happened that night shattered everything I thought I knew about loyalty, love, and sacrifice. But it also taught me the most powerful lesson of my life. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll see why sometimes the people closest to you can be the ones who break you the worst, and how standing up can change everything. The moment Greg's glare locked on me, I knew the argument wasn't over. His fists were clenched, his jaw tight, but I wasn't about to waste another breath on him. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might break through my chest. I couldn't take the suffocating heat of that room anymore, not with their indifference smothering me. So I turned, grabbed my coat from the rack by the door, and pushed outside into the night. The slam of the door behind me echoed like a gunshot, but I didn't stop. The cold hit me instantly, slicing into my skin like shards of ice. My breath fogged the air, and for a moment, all I could hear was the crunch of snow under my boots. And then, there she was. My grandmother. Huddled on the porch steps, her frail body shaking violently, her thin sweater clinging to her shoulders like paper. Her gray hair was damp with frost, her lips trembling as she tried to pull her arms tighter around herself. My chest tightened at the sight. This woman who had once been the pillar of strength in my life now looked so small, so fragile, like a leaf caught in the storm. "Grandma." I rushed forward, kneeling beside her, slipping my coat around her shoulders. She flinched at first, as if startled, before her cloudy blue eyes lifted to mine. And when they did, they filled with tears. "Elijah," her voice was weak, barely more than a whisper. I didn't want to cause trouble. The words cut deeper than anything Greg had said. She didn't want to cause trouble. As if existing, as if needing warmth, was somehow a burden. My throat tightened, but I forced my voice steady. "You could never be trouble to me, Grandma. Never." I pulled her close, feeling how cold her skin was, how her body shivered even through my coat. "Why didn't they let you inside? What happened?" She shook her head slowly, her eyes darting toward the glowing windows where the rest of the family sat cozy around the fire. "They said I complained too much. That I always want the heat turned up. So I came out here instead." A single tear slid down her wrinkled cheek, freezing almost instantly. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. My own family, her children, had pushed her out here to shiver while they basked in comfort. "You're not complaining," I said firmly. "You're freezing. And they should be ashamed of themselves." Her hand found mine, thin and trembling, her grip weak but desperate. "Don't be too hard on them, Elijah," she whispered. "They've forgotten what it's like to be cold. To be hungry. They think comfort lasts forever." I swallowed hard, staring at her. Even in her pain, she was still protecting them. Still giving excuses for their cruelty. That was who she was, selfless, forgiving, endlessly patient. And that was why it enraged me even more. Because they didn't deserve her kindness. "Grandma," I said, my voice breaking despite myself, "you raised them better than this. You raised all of us better than this. She leaned her head against my shoulder, her frail body trembling. Some lessons fade when people get too comfortable, my boy. That's why God gives us the cold sometimes, so we remember the warmth we've been given. Her words struck me like lightning. She wasn't just talking about the temperature. She was talking about gratitude. About how quickly people forget sacrifices once their own needs are met. I blinked back tears, pressing my lips against her forehead. I won't forget, Grandma. Not ever. I tried to help her up, wrapping my arm around her to steady her weak legs. Her knees buckled beneath her, and my heart sank. You're too cold, I murmured. We need to get you inside. She gave me a faint smile, her teeth chattering. Inside where? With them? You know they don't want me there. I clenched my teeth. Then we'll make them want you there. My anger boiled again, but I kept my grip steady, lifting her gently as if she were made of glass. I pushed the door back open with my foot, carrying her inside. The warmth hit us immediately, but so did the stairs. The room went quiet as every eye turned toward us. My cousins froze mid-sip of their drinks, my aunt's smile faltered, and Greg's expression twisted into annoyance. What do you think you're doing? Greg barked, stepping forward. She wanted to be outside. I tightened my hold on her, my voice sharp. No, Greg. She didn't want to be outside. She was freezing. She could have gotten hypothermia, or worse. But none of you cared enough to check. Marie waved her hand dismissively, her bracelets jingling. Don't exaggerate, Elijah. She's fine. She's always so dramatic. She just likes attention. I spun on her, my voice shaking with fury. Attention? You think nearly freezing to death is about attention? She's your mother. You owe her your life, and you treat her like she's some stray cat scratching at the door. Greg's face darkened, and he stepped closer, lowering his voice like he thought it would make his words more powerful. You need to stop making us the bad guys, Elijah. You don't live here. You don't know what it's like day to day. She nags, she complains, she makes everything harder. Sometimes we need peace. My blood boiled so hot I thought I'd explode. Peace. I shouted, my voice cracking. You want peace? You'll have peace when she's gone, is that it? When she's lying in the ground and you can sit by this fire without guilt? Is that the peace you're waiting for? The room fell into a stunned silence. My words hung in the air like smoke, suffocating every person there. My grandmother stirred in my arms, her voice weak but clear. Enough, Elijah, she whispered. Don't waste your breath. But I couldn't stop. Not now. Not when the truth was clawing its way out of me. I set her down gently in the nearest chair, wrapping a blanket around her frail shoulders. Then I turned to face them all, my hands shaking, my voice trembling but loud enough to fill the room. You don't deserve her, I said, each word heavy, deliberate. Not one of you. But I'll fight for her even if none of you will. Because she fought for us when no one else did. And I won't let her be treated like this. Not while I'm alive. Their faces told me everything. Some were guilty. Some were angry. Some were just indifferent. But I didn't care. Because from that moment on, a war had started. And I wasn't backing down. Grandma's breathing was shallow as she sat in the chair, the blanket barely able to stop her trembling. I crouched beside her, rubbing her hands between mine, trying to get some warmth back into her skin. Every second that passed felt like a lifetime stolen from her, and yet nobody moved. My cousin stared awkwardly, my aunt sipped her wine like nothing was wrong, and Greg stood tall like he was the king of this broken castle. Finally, I snapped. Do you see her? Look at her hands. Look at her face. She could have died tonight, and you'd be sitting here none the wiser. And you call yourselves her family? One of my younger cousins, Lila, shifted uncomfortably. Her voice was small but audible. Uncle Elijah's right. Grandma doesn't look good. Maybe we should call a doctor. Greg spun on her, his face twisting. Stay out of this, Lila. You don't know what you're talking about. But I saw the fear in her eyes, the way her gaze lingered on Grandma's pale skin. She knew I wasn't exaggerating. She was just too afraid to defy him. I rose to my feet, standing toe-to-toe with Greg. She needs help. And if you won't give it to her, then I will. He smirked, folding his arms. Go ahead. Play the hero. But don't come crying to us when she drags you down with her. That woman is nothing but a weight around everyone's neck. The words hit me like a physical blow. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. I stared at him, my ears ringing, my vision blurring with fury. Then my voice came out low, cold, sharper than any shout. You just called your own mother a weight. I shook my head slowly, disbelief mixing with disgust. You are not a son. You're a coward. His smirk faltered, rage flickering in his eyes, but before he could respond, a weak cough came from the chair. I rushed back to Grandma's side. Her body shook violently now, her lips trembling as she tried to speak. Elijah, her voice was so faint I had to lean close to hear her. Please, take me away from here. My heart clenched. That was the moment everything changed. She didn't want to stay in the house she had built with her own hands, the home she had sacrificed her youth for, because the people inside it had turned it into a prison. I looked back at Greg, my voice steady but filled with fire. You heard her. She's leaving. With me. Marie slammed her glass down on the table. Don't be ridiculous. Where will you take her? To your cramped apartment? You can't take care of her, Elijah. You're just a boy playing hero. I stood taller, pulling the blanket tighter around Grandma's shoulders. I'd rather struggle every single day to care for her than let her spend one more night under this roof with people who treat her like garbage. Greg barked out a laugh, harsh and hollow. Fine. Take her. Let's see how long before you come crawling back, begging for help. I ignored him. Their voices, their cruelty, it all faded as I focused on the only thing that mattered, the woman who had once carried me when I couldn't walk, who had fed me when I was hungry, who had believed in me when no one else did. Now it was my turn to carry her. I bent down, scooping her frail body gently into my arms. She felt so light, so breakable, and yet there was strength in her eyes as she looked up at me. A silent trust. A silent plea. As I walked toward the door, Greg called after me, his voice sharp with venom. Don't say I didn't warn you, Elijah. You'll regret this. Mark my words. I paused only for a moment, turning my head just enough to meet his glare. The only thing I'll ever regret is leaving her here with you. And with that, I stepped out into the freezing night, the door slamming shut behind me. The cold air bit at my skin, but I didn't care. My grandmother's head rested against my chest, her breath shallow but steady. I tightened my grip, whispering softly as I walked into the dark. You're safe now, Grandma. I promise. You'll never be left in the cold again. In that moment, I wasn't just her grandson. I was her protector. Her shield. Her last line of defense. And I knew, no matter what battles lay ahead, would fight them all, for her. Because real family isn't proven by blood. It's proven by love. And tonight, love was all we had left. The night air stung my face as I carried Grandma down the icy street, her frail body wrapped tightly in my coat. My car was parked under the dim streetlight, dusted with snow. As I lowered her gently into the passenger seat, I saw the worry in her eyes. She didn't say it, but I could hear the question in the silence between us. Where will we go? How will you manage this? I fastened her seatbelt carefully, brushing the frost from her shoulder. Don't you worry, I whispered. We'll figure it out. Together. The drive back to my apartment was quiet, broken only by the hum of the heater and Grandma's soft coughs. I stole glances at her, watching the way her eyes stayed fixed on the blur of passing lights. She looked tired, so much older than the woman who used to race me up the porch steps when I was a boy. My heart ached with every mile. When we finally pulled up to my building, I parked and rushed around to her side. The stairwell wasn't kind to her weak legs, so I carried her up, one step at a time, until we reached my small apartment. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom on the 3rd floor, walls yellowed with age, the faint smell of old wood clinging to the air. But it was warm. And it was safe. As I set her down on the worn couch, she gave me a faint smile. "This isn't where I pictured I'd end up at my age," she whispered. I knelt beside her, my hand closing over hers. "I know it's not perfect. But it's better than that house, better than them. At least here, you'll be loved." Her eyes softened, a tear sliding down her cheek. "Loved is more than enough, Elijah." I stood and busied myself, pulling blankets from my closet, fixing a cup of tea on the stove, setting the thermostat higher than usual. My place wasn't equipped for an elderly woman, no special rails, no wide halls, but I would make it work. Because I had to. When I brought the tea to her, her hands trembled so badly she nearly spilled it. I steadied the cup for her, guiding it to her lips. As she sipped, I saw her shoulders ease for the first time that night. But when she set the cup down, her eyes locked onto mine with a weight that made my chest tighten. "You shouldn't have to do this," she murmured. "I don't want to ruin your life." The words stabbed through me. Ruin my life? I shook my head fiercely. "Grandma, you are my life. You saved me when I had nothing, when Mom and Dad couldn't. Do you remember when you worked double shifts just to buy me that guitar I wanted? You didn't let me give up on myself. Now it's my turn not to give up on you." Her lips trembled into a faint smile, but her eyes shone with sorrow. "I only wish your uncle and aunt could see what you see." I clenched my jaw, biting back the rage that threatened to rise again. "They don't want to see it. But they will. One day, they'll regret every single thing they did tonight." She reached out, her thin hand brushing against my cheek. "Don't waste your soul on bitterness, Elijah. Promise me that. Fight for love, not revenge." I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. "I'll try. But I can't promise I won't remember how they treated you." That night, after I tucked her into my bed and laid myself down on the couch, I stared at the ceiling, wide awake. My mind raced with fears I couldn't silence. Could I afford her medicines? Could I balance my job with caring for her? Could I protect her from the loneliness they had forced on her? But underneath the fear was something stronger. A vow. A fire. I had chosen this path, and no matter how hard it got, I wouldn't abandon her. Not ever. Because sometimes, love isn't about convenience. It's about sacrifice. And that was a lesson my family had forgotten, but I never would. The first week was harder than anything I had ever imagined. I thought love alone would be enough to carry me through, but love doesn't pay for medicine. Love doesn't stop the phone from ringing when the landlord wants rent. Love doesn't keep the boss from frowning when you show up late because you spent the morning helping your grandmother out of bed. Every day felt like a test I wasn't prepared for. I would wake before dawn, cook oatmeal she barely had the strength to finish, rush her pills into her trembling hands, and then run out the door to my shift at the hardware store. By the time I dragged myself home, I'd find her sitting quietly in the living room, staring at old photo albums, her eyes drifting between joy and sorrow. One night, I came home to find her on the floor. The sight stopped my breath cold. The blanket was tangled around her legs, the photo album spilled across the rug. I dropped everything and rushed to her side. "Grandma. Oh my God, are you okay?" My hands trembled as I tried to lift her, fear clawing through me. She winced, pressing her hand to her hip. "I just lost my balance, Elijah. Don't look so frightened." But I was frightened. My heart hammered as I eased her back onto the couch, checking her over like I was a doctor. "We need to get you checked. You could have broken something." She shook her head stubbornly. "I don't need doctors. I need faith. Faith won't fix a broken bone, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Her eyes softened, even as pain flickered across her face. But faith is what makes you get back up, even when you fall. The words silenced me. She always had a way of turning even her pain into wisdom. But still, I couldn't shake the fear gnawing at me. If one fall could hurt her like this, what would happen the next time? That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. I thought about money, how my paycheck barely covered groceries and utilities, let alone doctor visits. I thought about time, how every hour I worked was an hour I wasn't there to help her. And I thought about my family, sitting warm in that house, refusing to lift a finger while I broke myself in half to keep her safe. The anger threatened to consume me, but then I remembered her words, fight for love, not revenge. So the next morning, I tried harder. I rearranged my schedule, begged my boss for shorter shifts, started cutting corners everywhere I could. Some nights I skipped dinner just to make sure she had enough. And through it all, Grandma never once complained. She thanked me for every meal, every blanket, every moment I sat by her side. One evening, as I rubbed her hands to warm them, she looked at me with eyes that glistened in the dim light. "Elijah," she whispered, "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you." I froze, staring at her in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" "You deserve the world, Grandma. You're the reason I am who I am. You gave me everything." She shook her head slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. I wasn't always strong enough for everyone. But you're stronger than I ever was." Her words broke something inside me. I took her trembling hand and pressed it to my chest. "Don't you dare say that. You are the strongest person I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it, because I want to be worthy of you." She smiled faintly, closing her eyes. "Then promise me one thing, Elijah. Anything. When I'm gone, don't let bitterness be the only memory you carry. Remember love first." My throat closed. I couldn't answer, not with words. So I just held her hand tighter, praying silently that "gone" wouldn't come anytime soon. The call came just after midnight. I had dozed off on the couch, the faint hum of the heater lulling me, when a sound pierced my sleep, a thud, followed by a faint cry. My eyes shot open. "Grandma?" I rushed into the bedroom and found her crumpled on the floor, her hand clutching her chest. Her face was pale, her breaths ragged. Panic surged through me. "Stay with me." My voice cracked as I scrambled for the phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. My heart pounded as I tried to comfort her, pressing her hand against mine. "Help is coming, Grandma. Just hold on." The ambulance ride felt like a nightmare stretched into eternity. I sat beside her, gripping her frail hand, praying harder than I ever had before. Every bump in the road seemed to shake her fragile body, and every shallow breath cut deeper into my soul. At the hospital, the fluorescent lights were harsh, the sterile smell suffocating. They wheeled her away, leaving me alone in the waiting room. I paced the floor, my mind a storm of fear and guilt. If I had gotten her to a doctor earlier, if I had saved more money, if I had done more, maybe this wouldn't be happening. Hours crawled by before a doctor finally emerged, his expression grim. "She's stable, but weak. Her heart can't take much strain. She'll need medication, regular checkups, and constant care." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Whatever it takes. I'll do it." He glanced at me, his eyes heavy with the weight of reality. "It's not just about willpower, son. It's about resources. Without proper support, she's at serious risk." Resources. The word echoed in my head like a cruel joke. My bank account was nearly empty. My job barely covered the basics. And yet, how could I tell him no? How could I tell her no? When I finally saw her again, lying in the hospital bed, wires and monitors surrounding her, she looked smaller than ever. But when she opened her eyes and saw me, she managed a weak smile. You stayed, she whispered. Of course I stayed, I said, gripping her hand. I'll always stay. But even as I spoke the words, fear gnawed at me. Could I keep that promise? Could I hold her world together when mine was falling apart? The next day, after she was discharged, I brought her back to my apartment. Bills were already piling up on the kitchen table. My boss had left 2 voicemails threatening to cut my hours if I kept missing shifts. And when I checked my wallet, all I found was a few crumpled bills. I tried not to let her see the weight on my shoulders, but Grandma always saw through me. One evening, as I stirred a thin soup on the stove, she spoke softly from the couch. Elijah, don't break yourself for me. I froze, the wooden spoon clattering against the pot. I'm not breaking. I'm fighting. She shook her head gently. There's a difference. Before I could answer, there was a sharp knock at the door. I opened it to find Greg standing there, his smirk as sharp as ever, Marie behind him with her arms folded. Well, Greg sneered. Look at the hero's palace. Cozy little shack you've got here. I clenched my fists, blocking the doorway. What do you want? Marie's voice was sweet, dripping with false pity. We just came to check on Mom. We heard she was in the hospital. My blood boiled. You heard? And where were you when she was lying on the floor gasping for air? Where were you when I called the ambulance? Greg's smirk widened. Not my problem. You wanted her, remember? You stormed out of the house like some savior. Don't cry now because you can't handle it. I felt the heat rising in my chest, my jaw tightening, but before I could unleash my fury, a weak voice floated from behind me. Greg. We all turned. Grandma was sitting up, her blanket draped over her shoulders, her eyes clear despite the strain. You don't get to talk about handling me like I'm a chore. I am your mother. For a moment, Greg faltered. His smirk wavered, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, shame, maybe, or guilt. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He scoffed, waving his hand. You should have stayed where you belonged. Don't blame us if Elijah can't carry the weight. Something inside me snapped. I stepped forward, my voice thunderous. Get out. Both of you. You don't get to waltz in here and spit on her after what you did. You lost the right to call yourselves family the night you left her in the cold. Greg raised his hands in mock surrender, Marie rolling her eyes. Fine. But don't come crawling to us when you realize you can't save her. The door slammed shut behind them, and I stood there trembling, rage and despair battling inside me. Grandma's voice broke the silence. Don't let their poison kill your spirit, Elijah. Promise me. I turned to her, my eyes burning. I promise. But I won't lie, I don't know how much longer I can do this. She reached for my hand, her grip weak but steady. Then lean on Faith. And lean on me. We'll get through this, together. Her words lit a fragile flame in the darkness, but deep down, I knew the storm was only growing stronger. It's strange how life works. One moment, you're drowning, sure you'll never come up for air. Then suddenly, in the unlikeliest place, you find a breath of hope. That hope came to me at the grocery store. I was standing in line, counting coins for a loaf of bread, when an older woman tapped my shoulder. Excuse me, aren't you Elijah Porter? I blinked. Yes, why? Her face lit up with recognition. You helped my husband last winter, his car broke down on the highway, and you stayed with him until the tow truck came. He told me you even gave him your jacket. I vaguely remembered, but I hadn't thought twice about it back then. Well, she continued, our daughter runs the Silver Oak Care Foundation. They help families who take in elderly loved ones. You should apply, you'd qualify for full support. Her words hit me like sunlight breaking through clouds. Could this be real? I went home, filled out the application, and within weeks, everything changed. A nurse began visiting 3 times a week. Grandma received her medication regularly. A food delivery program stocked our shelves with fresh groceries. And for the first time in months, I felt like we weren't fighting alone. But the biggest change was still to come. One crisp Saturday morning, the foundation director herself, Mrs. Caldwell, came to visit. She sat with Grandma, listening to her stories, laughing at her sharp wit, and then she turned to me. "Elijah," she said, "we're expanding our program, and we need someone with heart, someone who's lived this. Would you consider joining our team?" I was stunned. Me? The guy barely holding it together? But the sincerity in her eyes told me she meant it. It wasn't just a job, it was a calling. And when I accepted, it felt like stepping into a new chapter of my life. Soon, our lives blossomed. I wasn't just earning enough to provide, I was surrounded by people who valued compassion over convenience, sacrifice over selfishness. Grandma grew stronger with the care she received, and I grew stronger with the purpose I found. And then came the day I least expected. The annual gala of the foundation was buzzing with people in suits and gowns, soft music playing under golden lights. Mrs. Caldwell asked me to share my story, our story. As I stood on that stage, looking out over the crowd, I spotted them. Greg and Marie, sitting stiffly near the back. They looked out of place, uncomfortable, but unmistakable. I swallowed hard, then began. "My name is Elijah Porter. I was raised to believe that family means protecting each other, no matter what. But I learned the hard way that not everyone believes that." The room fell silent as I told them everything. The night I found my grandmother shivering outside while her children sat cozy by the fire, the sacrifices, the nights of hunger, the fear of losing her. I didn't name Greg and Marie directly. I didn't have to. They shifted in their seats with every word, the truth heavier than any spotlight. "But here's what I've learned," I continued, my voice steady now. "Love isn't proven by words, or by blood, or by titles. Love is proven in action. And the greatest honor of my life has been the chance to fight for the woman who once fought for me." The audience erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Grandma, sitting in the front row, wiped tears from her eyes. And as I stepped off the stage, strangers came forward to shake my hand, thanking me, praising me, but all I cared about was the smile on her face. That night, as the gala ended, Greg approached me. For once, the smirk was gone. He looked smaller. "Elijah," he muttered, glancing at the floor. I didn't realize. I didn't know it was that bad. I met his eyes, unflinching. "You didn't want to know." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Maybe I was wrong. I let the silence hang for a moment before answering. "You weren't just wrong, you were cruel. And you can't undo what you left her to suffer. But maybe you can change how you live from here on out. That's your choice." He nodded once, awkwardly, before shuffling away. It wasn't an apology. Not really. But it was a crack in his armor. And that was enough for me to walk away. Without bitterness. Because I had already won. Back at home, Grandma and I sat together, the night quiet around us. She leaned her head against my shoulder, her voice soft. "You saved me, Elijah. Not just with food or medicine, but with love. And now the world sees it too." I smiled, my chest tight with emotion. "No, Grandma. You saved me first. All I did was return the favor." She chuckled weakly, squeezing my hand. "Then we're even." But I knew the truth. I could never repay her. I didn't need to. Because love, real love, doesn't keep score. And as I watched her drift into peaceful sleep that night, I whispered a silent vow: no matter what storms came our way, I would always choose love over convenience, sacrifice over comfort, and family, not the kind you're born with, but the kind you prove, over everything else. As the years passed, Grandma grew older, her steps slower, her voice softer. But she never again sat shivering in the cold. She spent her days surrounded by warmth, mine, and that of the community we had built together. The last thing she ever told me before she closed her eyes for the final time was this. Elijah, you proved that love is stronger than neglect, stronger than greed, stronger than selfishness. Promise me you'll keep showing the world that family is not about who shares your blood, but who shares your heart. I held her hand, tears streaming down my face, and whispered, I promise. And I've kept that promise every single day since. Through my work at the foundation, through the lives we've touched, through the people who once felt abandoned but now know they're not alone. Because I learned something I'll never forget: when you fight for love, even in the darkest winters, you bring the warmth that saves lives. White heavy checkmark moral: family isn't defined by last names or DNA. It's defined by who shows up when it matters most.